Yeah.
So, Raaid, how do you think that the newly elected US President Donald Trump would impact the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war? And do you believe that Trump would bring the entire war towards a ceasefire, or he would arm Ukraine to do an counteroffensive against Russia?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. It's a very topical issue right now, the American election and, Trump's return. It's a very triumphant return for him. Um, the only thing, really predictable about Donald Trump is that he is unpredictable. That's I think the only thing that we can say about him with certainty. But, most analysts would say that we need to take him on face value. So Trump, as far as the Ukraine war is concerned, has very famously said, it's been repeated over and over again, that he said, I'm going to end the war in 24 hours. Now, that's quite a feat if he's able to do that. But Putin has also said, Trump's claims they deserve some attention at least. So at the very least, we at least need to really look into what that claim is and how, if at all, he's going to do that. Now, in the past, he's asked Ukraine to concede something to Moscow. Donald Trump, he loves to cut a deal. He sees himself as this big settler of big issues. We've seen that sort of version of him in the past as well. So he's done so with the Abraham Accords, this sort of big defrost in the Middle East, where these sort of traditional rivals of Israel, he was able to bring them on board and get the recognition of Israel as a state. He moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. That was a big move. He obviously, famously met Kim Jong Un, went to travel to North Korea. So he's a bit of a mover and a shaker in terms of international politics. Will there be a ceasefire? I think so. Yes. If so let's just see what's happening over here. Donald Trump, if only for vanity reasons, would want to see some sort of a settlement when it comes to Russia, Ukraine. He would, and this is not just for himself. Actually, Russia and Ukraine would want to be part of some sort of settlement as well. Both these countries are facing tremendous internal sort of domestic pressures with regards to the war. Also, we don't talk about this enough, I think, but European Union, the European Union's involvement in the war, they want to have some sort of a settlement over there as well. I think the central issue here is what will that look like? Donald Trump, he doesn't come off as a fan of Zelensky. So if and we also know that he has some sort of a personal relationship with Putin. Now that relationship has its ebbs and flows, but there is some relationship over there. What we really need to analyze is, what will that ceasefire look like? We have several options over there. So number one would be if we go for a freeze, जो अभी status quo है, we just retain that. That would leave some parts of Ukraine and eastern Ukraine with Putin. That would that be acceptable to Ukraine? Probably not. We also have to look at Crimea. Do we have Crimea on the table at all? Has Europe really become comfortable with Crimea being under Russian control, because it has been with Russia since 2014? So we really need to sort of look at that. As far as Russians are concerned, any ceasefire deal would require a guarantee on the American part that Ukraine will not be part of NATO. That is an existential issue for Russia, that Ukraine should not be part of NATO. So any kind of ceasefire, if we have, would require Ukraine's complete sort of, not being part of NATO as far as Ukraine is concerned. Now, to what extent is that acceptable to Zelensky? We really we'll have to see. But will there be a ceasefire? I think so. Yes.
So on this response, I have just two questions in my mind. That first of all, don't you think that with this overall stance of Trump that he would bring a ceasefire, and you said that he is not, a kind of a fan of the Ukrainian premier, and
Yeah.
he has a bit of a connection with the Russian President Putin, which we
Yeah.
he was in tenure. Don't you think that it would create a sort of an atmosphere of of Trump being pro-Putin and being anti-Zelensky, and would not that create an issue for the Trump government to stay in US? Because let's agree that every American doesn't want United States to be in good relationships with Russia.
Yeah. So that is true, but I think
Wait. Also, I'd like to add something that if negotiations fail or lead to Russian gains, what contingency plans would be in place to support Ukraine without reigniting the current?
so. You're right about Americans not wanting, a positive relationship with Russia. But I think the bigger concern actually that Americans have is that they don't want to be dragged into this Ukrainian conflict. And that's not just the US. That's also the sentiment in Germany. That's also the sentiment in France. That's also the sentiment in the UK. We've just seen people voting, in big, big numbers for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has always stood for isolationism. He's always stood for, sort of removing America from global wars, not being this sort of global policeman for, conflicts abroad. So I think Americans are more concerned with getting America out of Ukraine, not sending aid, not sending, because Donald Trump, he famously said about Zelensky, his demands never end. Now, right now, they're supporting Ukraine with aid, they're supporting Ukraine with weaponry. But if they really want to get into the Ukrainian camp, Ukraine would love if the Americans actually send in troops. And that is just something that is completely, not acceptable to not only the Americans, but the British people feel the same about British troops as well. And, when in 22, when the war started, there were big protests in Germany, in Berlin, happening against German involvement in Ukraine. So I think Americans more so than we sometimes you overstate this sort of America versus Russia Ukraine binary that we have. Americans are far more concerned with having money in their own pockets, and for them that only happens if America is not fighting everybody else's war. So Donald Trump stands for that as far as they're concerned, and that's just something that they would want. They would want to cut a deal over there.